You're listening to Masters Decoded podcast series. I'm your host and the chief decoder, Anis Merchant. Through this podcast, I bring in guests who are successful in a different walk of life to decode and map out their careers and journeys with the hope that we gain all our learnings. The world around us is changing exponentially, and how the impact of artificial intelligence, technology, and other socioeconomic factors have either influenced or enhanced my guests' careers. In today's podcast, I have invited Dr. Nelli Gluzman. From a math major to a pediatrician, Dr. Nelli has an interesting medical journey. Her own life experiences with her own daughter have got her to adopt, practice, and preach holistic medicine to her patients and parents who come to her. Dr. Gluzman has been a practicing pediatrician in New York for over a decade. She received her medical degree from the New York College of Osteopathic Medicine, completed her pediatric residency at Jersey Shore University Medical Center, New Jersey, and is board certified fellow of the American Osteopathic Board of Pediatrics. She is also a medical consultant for Google Search, a guest speaker for NBC and BuzzFeed, and founded the Bright Illusion Thinking, where she composed evidence-based medical research content for fellow physicians. As a parent, I have learned a lot from her about holistic medicine. She's been generous enough to provide 20% off on the 5-week program which she runs. So you can visit her website www.blossompediatrics.com and insert the code BLOSSOM. Without much further ado, let me get on with it.
Hi, Dr. Nelli. Welcome to Masters Decoded podcast series. Thank you for taking time out.
Thank you so much for having me on. It's actually a huge, real honor to be on your show.
Likewise, when I was reading a little bit about you, people have given you a name, Dr. Mom. Talk a little bit about that. How did that come about? Why do people call you Dr. Mom? And how did that...
That's a great place to start. Yeah, thank you. So I am a mom. I have a child, and I was already a pediatrician when she was born. I felt like I was a really good pediatrician because I worked in a hospital setting. At that time, I was working with the sickest hospitalized kids. These were kids who were very unfortunately in the intensive care unit, in the neonatal intensive care units, hospitalized, the sickest as sick as kids can get. And my job was to get them better and get them home to their parents so they could continue to thrive and be well. And I had my daughter, and when she was about 3 years old, she started, as all kids do, started to get sick. But for her, every little cold would turn into something really serious. I mean, that one year she was sick like 7 times. She was on antibiotics, and I felt so super overwhelmed with the whole situation, because how did I not know, as a pediatrician working with the sickest kids, how did I not know how to keep my own kid healthy? And so I mean, as many heroes' journey, this was not my hero's journey, but for my daughter, I had to figure out what was missing from my knowledge and education on how to keep her healthy, how to make sure that every little cold doesn't turn into something that she would miss school for and need to be possibly even hospitalized. So I pivoted my career pretty dramatically, and I went from what I consider to be a conventional pediatrician to a quote-unquote holistic pediatrician. And I healed my daughter. She's well now, thank goodness.
Nice. And congratulations.
Thank you. And a lot of people wanting to know the same. They were trying to figure out how to keep themselves healthy, their own children healthy. And so I kind of would have a lot of friends calling me like, oh, Dr. Mom, what do we do to keep our kid healthy? And so my pediatric patients of my holistic practice started coining that name for me because I am a physician, but I feel like a lot of families say that I have such a maternal presence. And I hear that a lot. And so it just kind of came about. And so many people, different people called me that I allowed it to be. And I feel like that's my first nickname, Dr. Mom.
So I'll call you Dr. Mom throughout this conversation then. So let's stem it. You spoke about something being traditional pediatrician to being a holistic pediatrician. So what is holistic in your perspective? And for the benefit of the audience, like I'm a parent to two beautiful sons, what would an advice be to a parent? What does holistic medicine mean or a holistic care mean?
So I'm a pediatrician in New York. So what I consider to be conventional pediatrics is someone that goes to a conventional medical school, allopathic or osteopathic, and then they do a residency. You work in a hospital for some time, and then you practice conventional medicine. That's like one side of it. What I consider to be holistic pediatrics is an umbrella term. And it's a great question because for a lot of different people, it means different things. For me, that means looking at the root cause of a problem and addressing that instead of just covering up symptoms and calling that a solution. That's the big problem that I'm seeing right now, and that's the big difference. And both have their place. Both are extremely important. Conventional pediatrics is life-saving. These are your life-saving antibiotics and steroids and all the creams that you might put on a kid's skin if they have eczema, the inhalers to open up their airway, the steroids to calm the inflammation, even the allergy medicine that you could very easily buy in a pharmacy. That's all conventional pediatrics. And conventional pediatrics is so good at alleviating symptoms. It's going to work. It saves lives. It gets you home if you're hospitalized, if you're a child or an adult. But it doesn't really address the root cause of the problem. So how do you make sure that it doesn't happen again? How do you address that root cause? That's what I consider holistic pediatrics, because it looks at giving a child's body what it needs to heal from the inside. The building blocks that a kid needs to heal, that's healing the root cause. And that's what I consider holistic pediatrics. But there are many different ways for that, many different varieties of medicine that go into that. It could be Chinese medicine, acupuncture, functional medicine, integrative medicine, mind-body medicine. A lot of it is just traditional wisdom, what our grandparents and our great-grandparents knew and did. And also what I work with most is food as medicine, because it's so great for kids. It's herbs and not necessarily supplements, but things that grow from the ground and given to us by Mother Earth that don't have to be changed and altered too much to be useful for the body to be able to heal. That's what I consider holistic medicine.
It's such a pleasure to hear that, because I'm a grown up today and I have seen a lot of doctors and caregivers. When you talk about these naturopaths or these holistic methods, they first want to treat you with allopath because they want to cure you. But if the question you ask, hey, how can I not or ensure that this doesn't happen again? They say, oh, if it happens, you will take the medicine again, right? It's never about curing it from the roots. It's about just focusing in on it, getting it away during that set time. And you're so right that if you can't cure it from the root, just like if you're just going to trim the branches of the tree, and if you don't go ahead and focus on why the roots are behaving and what nutrition are we giving to that tree, it's not going to help.
Yeah, I started to get really nervous when I saw what I really do consider this, what's happening now in the Western world is a lot of kids are being hospitalized more frequently. They're having worse problems. I consider certain chronic childhood illnesses to be an epidemic right now. And for example, how many of you listeners had any friends when you were young that had food allergies, that had severe anaphylactic food allergies? Well, right now, there are about 2 kids in every classroom, about 2 kids in every 30 30-person classroom that have severe anaphylactic food allergies. At one point in the US, we ran out of EpiPens, which are medications that all of these kids have to walk around with.
Yes.
Be able, just in case they're around a peanut, for example, just in case, so that their airway doesn't close and they don't die. This is super scary to me. And I started to see that more and more frequent hospitalizations, worse eczema, younger kids having these problems. And conventional medicine can definitely solve the symptoms of that, but without addressing the root cause, even acknowledging that this is a problem. That's what scared me, and that's why I pivoted to dare call myself a holistic pediatrician while still practicing conventional medicine.
Yeah, I'll give you my own scenario. This was about 6 years ago. My elder son got urticaria rash, and it was new at that time for all of us. And it was a spat which came in where many people got it, adults to children, all got it. And we treated him with allopathy. And it would be so bad that he would have fever after that. He would be sleepy. He would not want to go out. He would miss school, and he would be a cranky baby, which was very different for him. And we tried everything. And in fact, one good friend who is an allopathic doctor, she recommended, why don't you go ahead and consider homeopathy and see what happens. And we actually did that. And touch wood, till date, it's never come back. It's like cured him completely. It's never happened. And I know urticaria rash is such a big phenomena again, where people start getting these hives because of some food or something which has happened naturally, and that has happened. So I completely align to that holistic medicine approach. And talking a little bit further now with the pandemic also, there is there's no vaccine. Actually, there is nothing to cure this, but people are thinking about the holistic methods like steaming, or taking vitamin C, taking vitamin D in the natural form. Do not resort to tablets, or zinc. Right, there are so many food which has so much of zinc content. I'm not prescribing, by the way. I just want to put a disclaimer that you should have this, but there are so much of holistic conversation. And I'm sure, being in New York is all over the news right now on the pandemic. You might be getting a lot of calls, and you would be super busy with the pandemic, what's going on. So talk a little bit about the current scenario as well.
Yeah, I mean, we went through a really scary time. Obviously, it was very scary, and a lot of us practitioners felt it's rare that we don't know what to do, and we don't have a lot of tools in our arsenal. A lot of that has to do, in the conventional world, a lot of it has to do with which is amazing, but we want to have as much evidence-based medicine and guidelines and studies backing all of our actions. And back then, when it all just started in New York, there was none of that. We really had no idea how to even proceed. It was, although it didn't seem like a completely new situation, we didn't have all the guidelines. A lot of information was being dispersed through channels, which really shocked me. Like physicians who just went through this only a week or two earlier had a lot more knowledge behind how to proceed with patients who were really sick. And they were forming like Facebook groups or WhatsApp groups, and just trying to move this information along because there was no other way. That technology really helped, and it helped a lot of practitioners feel empowered. It also was a lot of misinformation. It was really disorienting. As a pediatrician, I have to say that kids were really, truly spared from all this. But just like with adults who have pre-existing conditions that predispose them to have a more difficult course, possibly hospitalization or intubation, just like adults have that as a problem, kids have the same issue. And so the kids that we were worried about most were the kids that already had so much inflammation in their bodies and were so sensitive to any upper respiratory infection. Those are the kids that are wheezing and having asthma exacerbations and already hospitalized for every little cold. And so that's who we were really worried about. And I think this is when we started to look at, well, at least I started to look at, how do we make sure that these kids were fully empowered by their parents? For my patients at my holistic practice, as soon as I heard about vitamin D, and since everybody was kind of home, I literally started prescribing sunshine to boost up a lot of vitamin D levels. So as the information started to come in, we saw a lot of these holistic, what we call holistic practices or natural medicines being incorporated into traditional treatments. That would be the zinc, that would be the vitamin D, vitamin C. Those were actually being used in the hospital setting. And that made me so happy to see, because number one, I know it worked. We always knew it worked. This is what our grandparents knew worked. Foods that help you detox. Glutathione started to be used more and more in traditional settings. So we've gained a lot of knowledge since then. And some of that knowledge was to look back at the traditional medicines that are not necessarily Band-Aid treatments, but give the body what it needs to heal, to stabilize the immune system, and to get through this and even stronger.
So Dr. Mom, I'm sure, and this is a very passionate topic, and but before we get to talk more about this, why doctor? Why being a pediatrician? How did that start? Do you always wanted to be a pediatrician?
No, I was a math major, applied mathematics. Wow. It was the love of my life. I found nothing more exhilarating than doing proofs, and I wasn't that great at it, but I was pretty good. I had awards and honors. I was going to be in the world of math, and I was fortunate enough to start working in New York for a really amazing family adult physician, family practice. And he started to, I was his secretary, and then he started to kind of like let me take vital signs and do EKGs. And I loved how every patient would come in to see him, and when they would leave, they were just, even as sick as they were, I felt like they really were nurtured, supported, and a lot more positive than when they came out of the office. So although no actual treatments were happening in this office that would turn them around, their energy coming out of that room was completely different. I mean, it was amazing to see. It was so inspiring. I wanted to be that change for people too. I felt like it was my calling to serve. And one way for me to serve is scientifically, and I also feel like medicine is an art, and it does take a certain special type of person to be able to see past the illness. And it's kind of, not always pretty, it's not always clean, sometimes it's not comfortable, it was really challenging. So, but I really just felt like this is one way that I could significantly impact many different people's lives and serve humanity.
So why kids as a practice area?
Because I realized very quickly as I started rotating that I don't have enough compassion for adults when they get themselves into the mess. So you have to have enough compassion, but I can't find it. Like, you're an adult, you kind of should have known better. So I can't help you, like, if you don't want to help yourself. And that's a lot of adult medicine. But when you're treating children, you're not really treating the child as much as you're treating the parent.
Yes.
And I could say I've never been frustrated really by a parent.
Okay.
Like, I really understand where they're coming from more and more. Even before I was a parent, it was pretty good, but now I'm great at it. And I feel like you're really just treating the parent and their emotions. I can't imagine anything that could be scarier than your sick child. Yeah. So I appreciate that. And I find that sometimes parents just need to be listened to. Unfortunately, there's not a lot of time for physicians to sit down the way that it's set up in most settings. And that makes me sad and kind of scared, because a lot of information gets missed, or a lot of people don't really get to speak their word or explain their troubles in this convent. The way that it's set up, it's not their fault. It's just the way it's set up, and at least in the US, you have to see a lot of families. So I also tried to pivot away from that when I created my practice, so I could spend a lot of time with families.
That's great. Being a math major to being a pediatrician, I'm sure there would have been a mental transition which you had to do. That you were all aligned to be focused in the world of math. So how were the first couple of years practicing what you started focusing on being a pediatrician?
Yeah, I took on a lot when I tried to transition. It was a completely different path, and so I had to double up the courses. And quite frankly, the first time I took the entrance exam to get into medical school, I didn't really study because I was so busy in the world of really, really difficult math. The kind of math that has no numbers at all. It's just symbols you've never heard of, and like essays. It was a lot, and I still wanted to do it. And the first time I took my entrance exam, I wasn't prepared and I bombed it. And most people at that point would say, this is not my path, and just move on. But instead, I remember like getting that terrible grade and just not allowing that to there was no way, like this is not going to end here. There's absolutely no way. And I took 3 months off from work, from all the other classes, just to study. I studied probably 10 hours a day, nonstop, like 6 days a week. I loved it. I would go into my study space, study my heart out, watching my scores go up when I did practice exams, and knowing that if I get this done, nothing will be able to stop me then, because this is true grit. Like when you fail and then you're able to pick yourself up, scrape yourself off, get back on the horse and go harder, then you're unstoppable. And I think that's what medical schools were looking for. And it actually helped. I did great. The second time around, I got a great score and I got a ton of interviews, and I actually used that failure to my advantage. And when I got interviewed, like, what happened? How did you go from like the most terrible grade to the most fantastic grade? And I said, like, this is how badly I want it. So I messed up in the beginning. I had no idea, you know, I'm a college student. I took on too much. This is what I'm able to do. Could go from point A to point B because this is how much I want it. And I got where I wanted to go, and I was really happy. And I still am.
That's good. And I can see that passion coming from you in this conversation as well, that the decision which you've made has really helped out. But have you ever had a chance in that once you started, let's say you graduated and you started practicing or you started doing your research, that ever a thought crossed your mind that the world of math was much better than the world of pediatrician? Has ever those thoughts crossed your mind, or you were over with the world of math?
It wasn't the world of math versus pediatrician. It was trying to figure out which specialty is right for me, because they're all so different. There's so many options. That's amazing. Everyone's kind of super specialized, and you have to dedicate 120% of your life when you do a residency, which is when you learn the actual art of the practice. So I pivoted a lot between like psychiatry, pediatrics. Should I just go into research? I did that for a while in a transitional moment. But pediatrics, there's not a single day that I felt like I don't like the kids that I'm treating. Like I like them all. and work never wears me down. Like other things could wear me down, but work has never worn me down emotionally. So I feel like and it never really did. So I feel like even the hardest moments, when things don't go the way that you expect, when you form connections with people and families and children, and their course doesn't go as planned and things are difficult, and you see the most difficult, hard things, even beyond that, even, you know, mistakes get made. Or you don't, or when I didn't feel like I was good enough to treat them, or all those moments, I still never felt like I was worn down by my field.
So let's double click a little bit more on this, because this is one of the point which, when I see friends, or if I go and visit a doctor today or a general caregiver, they're always poker faced. They're the best poker faced. I would say that the best poker players are the doctors, because they don't have an expression of emotions, because if they try to do that, it's somewhere, it gets emotionally too attached. Then, the question comes about treating or giving those medicines, whatever the case is. How do you get into that doctor zone? Because emotionally, physically, and mentally, you have to get into that. And like you said, there are a lot of other things which can weigh you down. The world problems can weigh you down. But when you are in that Dr. Mom zone, you have to be in that Dr. Mom zone. So how do you prepare yourself to be in that? What's that switch?
Yeah, I have a confession to make.
Okay.
Confession is, when I see like a tooth fall out on my own kid, I could pass out.
Wow.
Really? I don't, but I literally, I have all the blood draining from my face. If I see someone outside the hospital who has like a gash and they're bleeding, I could possibly pass out. Like, I can't handle it at all. But when I step inside like my mental doctor zone, I'm totally fine. So it's not something that I choose to switch on or off. It's a matter of protecting your soul, my soul, because things can get really tricky in a hospital setting.
Yes.
I cannot take these things home. I can't.
Yeah.
It's not fair to my family. It's not fair to me. It doesn't serve anybody. So I don't try to switch it on or off, but sometimes the switch is too tight, and I feel like I need to have more feelings for a situation, and I can't if I'm like not in my setting. So it's a tricky balance. Of course, it's not simple, but I do have a lot of spiritual outlets that really, really hold me together in a really important way. I meditate every day, try to every day. I work out. So if there's a little bit of stress stuck in me that needs to come out, I'm able to do that. I can't imagine how hard it must be if I didn't have these outlets. Friends, happiness, good food, laughter, running, singing, dancing.
That's great.
Consider all those meditations.
At the end of the day, you are a human too.
Yeah.
Right? As they say, because doctors somewhere become like robots in people's eye, that you've gone to that person and that person has to cure because that person has all the answers. But they forget to realize that doctors are humans too. So talking about these moments, looking back, I'm sure you've had a lot of moments which you may want to forget, and there are moments which you still cherish and keeps pushing you forward. So let's talk about the good ones. Have you had a situation which keeps pushing you forward and saying, yes, that smile on the child's face or the smile on the parent's face, any of those moments, if you want to talk about, I think that will be great.
Yes. The first one that comes to mind is I had a young boy. He's 3 years old. When he came to my practice 1 year ago, he had a ton of allergies. His parents were really worried about him. He was the only one in his family that had allergies. They had to carry an EpiPen everywhere they went. They were worried about birthday parties. How is he going to go to preschool? He was getting rashes all the time. He was miserable. The parents were scared. He was scared. They went to like the best allergists. They knew exactly what he was allergic to. They were avoiding it. They were trying to make the best decisions for him. Nothing was working. They didn't want to continue to use the steroid creams because it would just make the rebound worse and worse and worse. And I know that feeling. It's the scariest feeling, to be worried about your child's health and feeling disempowered. I started working with this family really closely on healing his gut, because that's where his problem was. It was all gut health, helping the body detox through the gut, healing and sealing his gut lining, restoring the microbiome. I grew really attached to the family. We were always calling each other. And it's been 1 year, and he hasn't had any eczema flares for about 6 months. And when they went to his allergist, the allergist called me because I established kind of like a rapport with him. And he's like, he has no allergies, no more anaphylaxis, and they don't have to carry an EpiPen anymore. And to have a reversal like that, where kids outgrow it that quickly, is rare. I felt so whole. They were so happy. I know it doesn't seem like a big deal when you have just like, eczema or allergies. People consider that to be the norm nowadays, but I assure you this is not the norm. And they have peace of mind. They know exactly what to do to keep him healthy. He doesn't have this issue anymore. Everybody's well, and he's thriving. That's something that I'm really celebrating, because this whole healing the gut issue is very controversial in conventional medicine. If I speak to someone in conventional medicine that doesn't look at these approaches, they're gonna a lot of times say, this doesn't exist. You can't do that. But I do it all the time, and I did it, and I will keep doing it. And so having actual evidence, case studies in front of me that I can refer to, submit, publish, that makes me, sometimes I get thrown, like, what if it is not working? What if it's all in my head? All these people saying, no, you cannot reverse chronic childhood illness. But then I have evidence, and that makes me happy too. So those are the good things. That's what I'm celebrating. This is a big step for kids. Yeah. And also it's gaining in popularity. More and more people know that there's so much they can do naturally to reverse their illnesses. So a lot to celebrate, a big win for kids all around the world when it comes to conventional pediatricians also treating in a holistic fashion. The more people do this, learn about it, the more it's going to get done.
So you spoke about your own daughter falling ill when she was 3. So how did this entire intention of holistic medicine, was it like a light bulb which went on, or was it something which came in front of you, or somebody told you that, have you considered this? How did that show up?
So at that time I was spending a lot of time working with different plant medicines. And I went to different plant medicines for different things. So that kind of got me on the path of more what herbs, botanicals can we use for her as well, mycelium. There's so much out there. And I discovered that there's like this one physician who does functional medicine for kids in New York, just one. And it took me 6 months to get an appointment to see him.
Wow.
And
okay.
Yeah. And it was really expensive too. It wasn't like something that was really accessible to people all around. And he told me just some common sense things, like, don't eat things that are not good for you. Let's heal her gut a little bit, add some fermented foods. And that kind of opened up my world a bit to that, is desperately trying to get her healthy. Why does she have so much mucus? Why did she why does she need to have her adenoids removed? Did she even need that? Why is she getting rashes all the time? So I took his advice. It worked like magic. And I realized that it's not okay for it to be 6-month wait in a huge city like New York City, that there's only one person practice. This is not okay. So I felt like it was my calling to do the same for other families, what I did for my child.
How have you been able to exponentially increase this message around? So, there was only one doctor. Now let's say there are 2, including you, in New York City. So how have you been using to spread this message about holistic medicine?
There's a lot of this for adults, but not for children.
Hmm.
And it's gaining in popularity in the world of adult medicine, not so much for kids. I got myself a physician like that. I got well too. I haven't really been sick in years the same way
Hmm.
that I used to be. I was really happy with my results. And a lot of when I started this practice, not knowing how to be an entrepreneur, I never really ever even considered this to be possible for me. I didn't think I had enough grit. I didn't think I had enough like motivation to do it. And so, but the message was clear to me that I needed to bring this to more people. Like there's just not
Hmm.
enough. It's not fair to these kids. It needs to be done. If I'm not doing it, who's going to do it? So I reached out to a lot of like-minded adult physicians in New York who were doing something similar in the world of like work, like health coaches that are also physicians working with obese
Yep.
and like obesity and weight medicine. And a lot of people helped me so much. They never really viewed me as competition. And I started to do this. So I mean, I was just so grateful. It helped me so much. I felt supported. So I started to do the same for everyone else. And anyone that would call me, even someone that's coming in just now into this field in New York and doing the same thing, I don't consider anybody to be my competition. I will support them in every step of the way. I feel like together we have, we could grow together, we can help
Nice.
each other. This is not me against you. This is all of us against disease and reversing these chronic childhood illnesses. And so I'm hoping that whoever's listening to this message
Yeah.
feel, if there's someone out there that feels like they want to enter this field of healing and health and reversing illnesses, they could reach out to me and I'll tell you what I've done and what mistakes I made so you don't have to make the same ones.
You reached out to a lot of people to understand and get perspectives. Do you consider somebody as your mentor in this space as you go through this journey?
Yes. Well, I have a lot of physicians that I look up to. Dr. Aviva Ram is one, and Dr. Maya Shitri is another. They both have incredible books. Their books are meant for regular people, parents. They're easy to read. They're incredibly fun to read. I love all their work. And I actually recommend their books to medical students and physicians that I teach as part of the curriculum, which really opens, it's like a soft and gentle entryway into this world. Because you kind of have to get used to someone in the conventional world to these concepts.
Okay.
So those are, but I haven't met them yet. So I'm just following and loving them and supporting their work as much as I can. I do have mentors as a professional starting a business, having a business. A close friend of mine, two close friends of mine are considered to be big mentors. They are not in the world of medicine, but one is in the world of building community. And I consider him to be a mentor because not only did he try many times and fail until he succeeded, but now he's, nothing will stop him. And I think that's one of the major problems that I was encountering. Like, if I feel like I'm failing, I need to not stop, and I need a refresher on that. And I need someone to show me how it's okay to fail. It's okay for things not to go right. It's okay for people to criticize you. It doesn't really matter. Every failure is ultimately a success.
Yeah.
And so those kinds of people are who I consider my mentors.
Just on that point about that failure, because every person who's taken a point to tell you that you have failed has taken an effort to understand what you do. So that is a success itself. I always point that out.
Interestingly, those are the people not doing it.
Interesting. Now, something which you said and sparked my thought. You are a Dr. Mom. You are a parent. You're an entrepreneur. You're also teaching. What you just told me.
Yes.
What else are you doing?
What else?
And what's more to come from your side?
Yes, that's a great question. I am also learning, doing a practitioner training with the most once a week for 2 hours. I meet with my yoga teacher,
Wow.
and we study asana, Buddhism, meditation. We do a really serious practice. So I'm doing a practitioner training every single week in this very busy schedule. He's super far away. And so we meet every single week. That has changed my life. He is a role model and a teacher. And his name is Michael Hewitt. And so that's what I consider to be a big part of my life. What else am I doing? I have 14 chickens.
Wow. In New York City.
I have a house upstate New York,
Okay.
and I'm between the two homes, and so that's what quarantine did to me. I kind of like sought refuge in the country, and now we have 14 chickens, and they just started to lay their first eggs.
Beautiful.
Trying to make sure that they're well fed and happy.
Okay.
I have to say, parenting this day and age is its own job. There are so many. I mean, I think every parent is going through, with school-age children, is going through reading so many emails, coordinating all the things, making sure their kids are submitting everything online, all that stuff. Yeah, I find that to be my like fourth full-time job. And what's coming is I'm dabbling with the thought of doing a podcast where I interview different grandparents, like 3 generations of grandmas or grandpas from different cultures, and asking them what in their culture they were using as traditional medicine, just because I'm so super curious, and then looking at it from the scientific perspective. So stay tuned. It's in the works.
Look forward to it. Look forward to it. From one podcaster to another, go for it. Don't think about it, as they say. So building on a lot on this further, and you spoke about the pandemic and how parenting has been tough because there's a lot happening in digital. Same way, visiting a pediatrician or visiting any physician today has been tough. And a lot of people are advising, if it's not necessary, don't come. Telemedicine, virtual counseling has happened. Have you adopted any of those practices where you're doing more Zoom, more Teams, more WhatsApp calls with your customers or with your...
Yes. Yeah. I had to really pivot big time. Yeah. I mean, because everything shut down in New York, of course I do a little bit of telemedicine. It's not optimal, but it's better than nothing. There is an acute illness like a fever or kids pulling on their ear or coughing. I don't really think anything replaces a real life physical exam, to be honest. It scares me a little bit, but it's better than nothing. So you kind of pick and choose. My biggest advice for that is to trust your provider, to really have someone that you trust in your heart, and really listen to your heart and say, do I trust this person? Will they tell me that you should really go see a doctor in person, even if it might be a little bit of an increased risk? So having that relationship is helpful if possible. But I personally had to change the way that I see families altogether, and I created a program that's live virtual for families because they weren't able to come and see me in New York. I started doing and a lot of people just didn't have the opportunity financially to do what was needed. So I created a group program where I do this once a month. It's a 30-day program to rescue the building blocks, what you need to know to start rescuing your child's health, with the focus of eczema, asthma, and allergies. So it kind of helps overwhelmed parents who don't know where to start getting their sick kids healthy. What advice do they take? There's so much out there. So I get on once a week and we do a live teaching, and then a very massive Q&A. I send them all the material. It's basically the same concept of where we begin when I see somebody one-on-one.
So how does someone subscribe to this if somebody has to do that?
Well, the information is on my website, which is blossompediatrics.com.
Great. Now, if I give you a time machine today.
Ooh, this is fun.
Say, And I say, Dr. Mom, you can go back into the past,
Okay.
okay? And you have a choice, relive your life the same way you did over again, or change few things when you go back. What would that decision be?
Okay, my eyes are closed. I'm going
Sure.
back. The only change I would make, if it didn't affect anything now, the only change I would make would be to spend more time with my grandpa. We were very close. And when I got older, I was kind of spending a lot of time with friends, which is totally fine. But it's been a year since he passed, and I would spend more time with him. He was really my best friend. And I feel like I miss him a lot. And he was the wisest, most resilient, most entertaining person I've ever really had a chance to be so close to. And I would probably spend more time with him. But other than that, I wouldn't change anything.
Wow. Now that answer was straight from the heart. I could. So
Yeah.
thank you for sharing that. There are a lot of people who are thinking of becoming a pediatrician, and I know we are on top of our hour. What will be your parting thoughts be to them? You spoke about conventional and you spoke about holistic medicine, and there will be people who will be more interested in the holistic medicine now because there is more awareness. What will be your advice to those young professionals?
Biggest advice is, for this field and for any field, there are a lot of really smart people out there. They might have better grades, a better ability to study. They pick things up quicker. None of that matters. If you want to go in a certain direction and achieve something, no matter what it is, the only person that could stop you is your own limiting beliefs, and nothing else matters. And so if you really want something, it's yours. So take it.
Thank you. Thank you for that message, and thank you for sharing good knowledge on holistic medicine. And that was really helpful, and I'm sure the listeners would be really pleased to hear. By the way, just a side point, when I was starting this, I was thinking, okay, you're going to be in New York. The atypical, I would be hearing sirens all across through this entire conversation, but you clarified you're in upstate New York, so I don't get to hear that throughout this conversation. So that's a welcoming change in New York to not hear sirens.
Yeah. It's New York City's, yes, loud. That's where I practice, and I'm currently sitting upstate New York. Yes.
Good.
You might hear some birds.
That's good. So now, Dr. Mom, thank you. Thank you for your time. This was amazing. Thank you for spending an hour with us today. This has been really fun.
I loved it. Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening in. And we close yet another episode of Masters Decoded. If you've enjoyed the episode, please, you can help us out by sharing it on social media. I would personally appreciate that. It's how we can reach more listeners, and the more listeners we have, the more awesome guests I can get in touch and convince to participate in these conversations that are a joy to have for me, and I hope they are a joy for you to listen as well. You can also help a lot leaving reviews on iTunes or your podcast service of choice. Reviews are surprisingly helpful in supporting the podcast to get to more listeners. If this episode has intrigued you, I would request you to subscribe to the podcast to stay up to date and get notified to the future episodes. With that, I bid you and see you in the next episode.